scared for refusing to support my sister's decision to move abroad with her children. Background: I'm a 31-year-old woman named Claire, and I am the youngest of 3 siblings. My sister, Angela, who is 35, has 2 children, Ethan, 8, and Mia, 5. My older brother David is 39 and has always been the golden child in our family. He's very successful in his career as an architect, while Angela and I have both chosen more unconventional paths. Angela is a stay-at-home mom, while I work as a freelance writer. My parents, who are in their late 60s and are both retired school teachers, have always been somewhat traditional in their views. Family is everything to them, and they've always been vocal about wanting my siblings and me to settle down, raise our families nearby, and support one another. Despite their insistence, I have lived in different cities, exploring my passions and gaining my independence. Recently, Angela announced that she planned to move with her children to Spain for at least 2 years. She had fallen in love with the idea of living in a different country and providing her kids with a culturally enriching experience. She had taken a few trips abroad and felt that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for her family. The announcement: Angela called a family gathering to announce her decision. My parents were initially excited, but the discussion quickly turned tense when I shared my concerns. I felt like uprooting the kids from their friends, school, and everything familiar would be detrimental to their development. They barely knew Spanish and would face challenges adapting to a new life at such a young age. Furthermore, I worried about how the move would prevent them from having a close relationship with our family, especially with their cousins. Claire, you're being so negative about this. It's not like I'm moving them away forever. This is an opportunity for growth. Angela fiercely defended her decision. I tried to explain my viewpoint without sounding overly harsh, but I also didn't want to just nod and agree. I felt responsible as a family member to voice my thoughts, knowing that the kids weren't old enough to express their feelings on such a big change. I understand that you want what's best for your kids, but what if the transition is harder on them than you anticipate? Kids thrive on stability, and this seems like a dramatic change, all for an experience that could go either way, I replied. Angela's expression grew stormy as she replied, "You don't have kids, Claire. You don't understand the frustration of feeling stuck. This is about living life to the fullest. A lot of parents make similar decisions for their families, and they don't regret it." The fallout. Over the next few days, our family gathering faded into the background noise of daily life, but discussions about the move continued to bubble under the surface. I talked to our parents, who were torn. They wanted to support Angela, but also couldn't shake off the values they had instilled in us about family. David, being the eldest and somewhat of the family mediator, tried to play both sides, saying he understood Angela's desire for adventure, but he also saw merit in my concerns. "Maybe there's a compromise here, Angela," he suggested. "You could try it for a year and see how the kids adapt. If it's not working out, you could always come back." That comment set off another argument. "And what if it's the best thing that ever happens to us? You won't even give me a chance to commit to this," Angela snapped back. I began to feel the strain in our family ties. Our group text became tense. Angela was furious with me for expressing concern, and my parents were disappointed in what the atmosphere had become. I felt a weight settling over me, as I was somehow at the center of this family storm. The decision. A couple of weeks later, Angela announced that the move was officially happening. They had found a rental home in a small town outside of Barcelona. "We're already planning the kids' schooling routines, and I'm sure they'll just pick up the language as kids do. Just wait. This will be amazing," she proclaimed on a family video call, her face alight with excitement. I couldn't help but feel a sense of dread creeping up within me. My heart sank. I kept picturing Ethan and Mia, confused and overwhelmed, trying to find their way in a new country with new customs. No longer easy play dates at grandma's or summer vacations with family, just silence and distance. As much as I wanted to be supportive, I knew that I couldn't lend my full-hearted approval. Honestly, I felt betrayed that Angela didn't even consider my perspective seriously. Just because I didn't have kids didn't mean I didn't understand what it meant to care about family and stability. When Angela asked me if I could help her with some of the logistics, like finding schools or even sorting through her contacts, to find expat resources, I flat out told her no. The words felt like poison on my tongue, but they were the truth. "I can't support this decision," I said firmly. "I think it's a mistake and you're going to regret it." Her eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you serious, Claire? You're my sister and you can't even be there for me." "Just because you disagree with my choice." I took a deep breath, my heart racing. "I just don't want to see your kids' lives turned upside down for a dream you met on vacation. I wouldn't feel right helping you with something I fundamentally disagree with." Angela's face fell into a mix of anger and hurt, and I could practically hear the metaphorical bridge breaking between us. Tension in the family. The weeks slid by, with tension rising like an overflowing pot of water on a stove. I received messages from my parents expressing their concern over the rift in our sisterly bond. "You two need to talk this out, Claire," my mum gently urged during a phone call. "We're a family. We should support each other, no matter the choices." But I wasn't about to back down. Yes, family is essential, but it felt wrong to enable a choice that I felt could have profound negative effects on the lives of two innocent children. Instead, I decided to take a step back while Angela proceeded with her relocation plans. I felt as if I were on a roller coaster of emotions, angry, sad, frustrated, and helpless. I kept thinking of the kids, how they might struggle, and it weighed heavily on me. I could only imagine how upset I'd be if I were in their shoes, watching my life change without fully understanding it. On the day that Angela and her kids were set to leave, my heart sank into my stomach. I didn't show up at the door to say goodbye. I could already envision the finality of seeing her off, with the weight of unspoken words lingering in the air. The churning emotions were too much for me to bear. The aftermath. Soon after her departure, I received messages from family and friends, angrily questioning why I hadn't supported Angie's dreams. I had friends telling me to let go of the negativity. Conversations turned into confrontations, and each text felt like daggers. Months passed and Angela settled into her new life in Spain. Social media became a double-edged sword. I saw her smiles and updates of playful beach days, new friends, and their experiences with the local culture. In a way, it all struck me as genuine happiness, but the details didn't erase the guilt I felt about not showing up for my sister. I secretly missed her and the kids. I often wondered if they were doing okay, and how they were really coping with their new life. During this time, my parents insisted that I at least schedule a video call with Angela. "She misses you, Claire. It's hurting her to lose the connection," they pleaded. "Fine," I agreed, though my heart felt heavy at the prospect. The thought of confronting her made my throat feel dry. Would she lash out at me? Would we fight again? The call was set up for a Friday evening. I sat there, my heart racing. But when the call connected and Angela's smiling face appeared on my screen, I felt a wave of emotions. The tension started to melt away as I greeted her. "Hey, sis. How's life treating you?" I asked, a hint of uncertainty laced in my voice. "It's really great. The kids are adjusting well and they've already made some friends. They love school here. I'm really glad we made this move," Angela beamed. A part of me felt a mix of relief and sadness. "I'm glad they're happy, but I just wish I could have been more supportive." I trailed off, the guilt seeping through every word. Suddenly, the tension resurfaced. "Support is more than just words, Claire. You made it impossible for me to reach back out. You turned your back on us." The conversation descended into chaos. Emotions boiled over as we both started speaking at once. The residual frustration and disappointment seeped into the air, making the situation unbearable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of back and forth, I cried, "Angela, I love you. I always have. But making life decisions for your kids without getting their feedback will forever feel wrong to me. I'm sorry, but that's just how I feel." The silence was thick, and although I dreaded that I might have lost her forever, a realization washed over me. I had been hoping to convince her to reprioritize family over the allure of adventure, but it was too late. She had to make her choices. Reflections. As the call ended, the heaviness never left my chest. I heard echoes of our failed arguments in my mind, But I also thought of the memories, playing with Ethan and Mia, family dinners filled with laughter, and embraces that felt everlasting. I longed to see them and embrace the innocence of childhood that had been left behind. Months turned into a year, and the distance between us felt insurmountable. It wasn't just geographic, it was emotional. However, I was forced to come to terms with the fact that we had both made our decisions. Angela had embarked on her chosen adventure, and I had chosen to remain staunch in my beliefs. Every now and then I'd get an update from my parents about their lives, or see photos Angela posted online. Sometimes it stung, and other times I couldn't help but smile at how well they adapted. The turning point. Then came a turning point. It had been over a year since Angela moved, and I received a message from David that brought everything rushing back. He suggested a family trip to Spain to visit Angela and the kids. "You need to forgive and reconnect," he texted. "Family is what matters most." After mulling over it for weeks, I made a decision. I wanted to see my sister, and I desperately missed my niece and nephew. I remembered the last time I had seen them, filled with tears when I refused to say goodbye. I had hoped they were thriving, but felt a pang of guilt at having turned them away. I agreed to the trip, and with anxious anticipation, we planned to go in a month. I packed all the what-ifs and how will this goes in a box to bring, along leaving behind ample doubts about our choices. Angela agreed to host us at her home, and I felt the weight of walking into her world, knowing I had once tried to pull her back. The reunion. The day of the trip arrived, and I stepped out of the cab in front of her small but charming house, nestled in a lively neighborhood. I could hear laughter and kids playing in the background as I stepped up to the door. My heart was racing. Angela opened the door, and we just stood there, staring at each other, not knowing how to proceed. Moments passed before she threw her arms around me, and I responded instinctively. "I missed you," I whispered through muffled tears. "I missed you too, Claire," she replied, pulling away to look at me. "I'm sorry for how everything has felt." We stepped inside, and the kids came barreling towards us, their faces lit up like fireworks as they hugged me. Ethan, in his trusty Spider-Man t-shirt, quickly started telling me about his adventures. At school, while Mia clung to my leg, shy but giggling. As we settled into the house, it felt like a new beginning for us. Meals turned into long conversations, where Angela opened up about her fears and struggles as a mom living in a foreign land, and I shared everything about my life and my recent freelance projects. The first few days passed like magic, but the conversation we had during the quiet moments spoke volumes. "I appreciate you being here," Angela confessed one night. "I've had moments where I felt completely lost, and it's hard not being close to family." I nodded slowly, my heart opening to the many layers she carried. "I'm sorry I couldn't support your decision back then. I just worried too much." In that moment, I understood something critical. Family bonds sometimes require healing, even if there are disagreements galore. We had both been stubborn. Bridges reconstructed. As the days passed, filled with warmth, laughter, and more adventures than I had anticipated, I realized we'd both changed. I could see the growth in Ethan and Mia, the way they interacted with other kids, how they embraced life in Spain with open hearts. I began to move past my anger and resentment, realizing just how brave Angela had been to follow her dreams. On our last night together, we sat outside watching the sunset, and the moment felt transformative. I turned to Angela and said, "I think we have both learned a lot during this time apart. Maybe it's okay for us to be different in our family choices. I just want us to be a family." Angela smiled softly. "Thank you for being here, Claire. No matter what, you're always my sister." As we embraced under the fading sunlight, I finally knew how to let go of all of those burdens I had carried. I wasn't a person who was going to hold resentment forever. We were family first, despite the varied paths we chose. Epilogue. Returning home was bittersweet. I had to accept that my sister was living in a different country, and that change isn't inherently negative, but I now felt armed with a renewed connection that transcended physical distance. Our chats became more frequent, filled with laughter and stories about our lives. And as the months flew by, I marveled at their European adventures. In the end, I understood that my initial reaction didn't make me an antagonist in this story. I had my own fears, and while I struggled to process change, Angela was trying to find her own happiness while being a mother. The landscape of family is always evolving, and sometimes we must learn to bend rather than break. As I continue to nurture my own dreams, I hold dear the bond I have with Angela. We grew, we debated, but we loved one another through it all. The world was vast, riddled with complexities, yet family endlessly intertwined us, inspiring hope and unconditional support, even from miles apart. I hope that, as a family, we can move through all the changes together, while finding strength in our unique journeys. Further down the road, our differences can make us stronger, and ultimately, we belong to one another, no matter where we are. Heights for refusing to help my sister. After she stole my inheritance? Background: my name is Claire. I'm a 32-year-old graphic designer, and I have an older sister, Laura, who is a 35-year-old marketing executive. We grew up in a competitive household, where achievements were highly valued. Our parents, while loving, focused heavily on our academic and professional accomplishments. Because of this, Laura has always been the quintessential golden child, and I've often felt overshadowed by her. Despite this, we maintained a fairly close relationship throughout our childhood and early adulthood. The event. 2 years ago, our father was diagnosed with terminal cancer. This news hit us hard, and as the primary caregiver, I took on the bulk of the responsibility for his care. Laura, busy with her high-powered job, was able to be there for the important moments, but could never commit the time I could for the day-to-day support he needed. The stress of the situation caused tension between us, as I felt resentful that she was able to keep her life relatively normal while I was sacrificing mine. During this time, our parents made arrangements for their estate. They didn't have significant assets aside from their modest home and a few retirement accounts, but they made it clear that what they had would be divided evenly between the two of us. They wanted us both to benefit from their hard work, and they hoped that combining our portions would help us support each other through tough times. As my father's condition deteriorated, I started to notice some changes in Laura's behavior. Gradually, she began showing more interest in our father's financial situation. One evening, during a particularly emotional visit, Laura let slip that she was doing some research on estate planning and the best way to handle our father's finances. I brushed it off, thinking it was just her way of coping, and focused on more pressing issues, like ensuring our dad was comfortable. After my father passed away 6 months later, the grieving process was overwhelming for both of us. In an effort to maintain peace during such a turbulent time, I encouraged open discussion about our parents' last wishes and the upcoming estate distribution. However, Laura seemed unusually evasive. She would often change subjects or express annoyance whenever their finances were discussed. This raised my eyebrows, but I didn't want to push her too hard while we were both grieving. The discovery. A few weeks later, while I was going through some documents our father had left me, I stumbled upon a folder labeled Legal Matters. Inside, I found the will. To my shock, there was a handwritten addendum that my father had made shortly before his death, something that was very unusual, as all our conversations about the estate indicated that it had been finalized months prior. The addendum stated that Laura would receive the entirety of their house and all its contents, while my portion consisted solely of their retirement accounts and a small amount of cash. I felt the air leave my lungs. Initially, I thought it was a mistake. After all the sacrifices I had made during my father's illness and all the moments of tenderness we shared, how could he leave her everything? It felt incredibly unjust. I called Laura, my heart racing, to confront her about it. When I asked her about the will and the changes, her reaction was defensive. She claimed I was overreacting and suggested that I was misunderstanding the will. She quickly pointed out that I had the retirement funds, which were worth much more in the long run. It took everything I had not to scream at her over the phone. Instead, I ended the conversation and sought legal advice. Once I consulted with a lawyer, I found out that the addendum was valid, but definitely not typical. I also learned that contesting it could take months, if not years, versus simply accepting it and moving on. Ultimately, it seemed like my father's intention had been muddled during his illness. My lawyer suggested we try mediation first, emphasizing that court battles could ruin our relationship forever. The mediation. I arranged a meeting with Laura to discuss everything in front of a mediator. When we sat down together, I was determined to remain calm and factual. Initially, I laid out my feelings regarding my father's wishes and how the changes came as a shock. I expressed that I believed the initial agreement was for an even split, and if Laura felt entitled to more, she needed to explain why. During the mediation, Laura maintained her defensive posture. She asserted that she had been closer to our father towards the end, and that his decision reflected their bond. As the mediator tried to steer us towards constructive dialogue, Laura made hurtful remarks about my choices, my career, and my life circumstances, insinuating that I was somehow more responsible for his condition because I was too overbearing in my caregiving. This comment cut deep. I felt like I had been thrown under the bus because I had prioritized my father's health and well-being over my own. In an attempt to gather my thoughts and respond thoughtfully, I shared how hard I had worked to take care of our father when she couldn't. I also stressed that our father wouldn't have wanted money to come between us. Laura, however, became adamant about maintaining her stance. She accused me of being jealous of her success and claimed that the money was simply a reflection of our different lifestyles. It was like a punch to the gut. Despite the mediation, an agreement was never reached. In the end, Laura's stubbornness and refusal to see my pain left me feeling betrayed and hurt. I decided then to pull away from her for a while, to gather my thoughts and contemplate what I wanted to do moving forward. Aftermath. Over the next few months, I went back to focusing on my work and started seeing a therapist to help manage my feelings of betrayal and heartbreak. I had always wanted a healthy relationship with Laura, but now it felt like everything was fractured. The holiday season came, and I decided not to attend family gatherings. I couldn't be around her when I felt validated grief over my father, and what I believed was a betrayal from her. Laura reached out to me several times, wanting to discuss our relationship and the will, but I just couldn't bring myself to answer. I wanted her to know how deeply she'd hurt me, but I also knew that she wouldn't see my perspective. Eventually, she stopped trying, but I knew our family conversations were becoming unbearably awkward, filled with tension and unresolved conflict. I eventually reached a point where I was forced to confront my feelings about my sister and our family. During therapy, I began to understand that Laura and my father may have shared a bond that I hadn't been able to see, a bond that had been strained by competitive dynamics growing up. My identity as the supportive daughter had always involved sacrifice, while Laura had often been more ambitious. This misunderstanding was central to our conflict about the inheritance issue. The breaking point. Finally, after almost a year of minimal contact, I received a text from Laura asking if we could meet to talk things over. I debated for a few days, unsure if I was ready to face her, but part of me believed that familial ties were worth fighting for, so I agreed. When we met, it was awkward at first. Laura offered some platitudes about missing me and wanting to rebuild our relationship, but I felt hurt and hesitant. Eventually, I brought up the will again, voicing my pain over being sidelined, my frustration at how she had manipulated the situation to benefit herself while pretending to care about me. Her response was dismissive, which infuriated me. Instead of listening, she jumped straight to justifying her actions and rationalizing our father's decisions, insisting he would be proud of her. I snapped and told her that he wouldn't have wanted us to tear each other apart. The argument escalated, and I shouted that I felt betrayed and that I couldn't trust her anymore. She seemed genuinely surprised and hurt by my accusations. It was clear that she didn't view her actions in the same light I did. I ended the conversation, saying that I needed space to heal and that I couldn't have her in my life right now. Conclusion. Reflecting back, I am grappling with the emotions surrounding our relationship and feeling guilty for not giving her a second chance. Yet I also feel that I need to prioritize my mental health. I tried my best to foster a bond that wasn't based on competition or resentment, but I find myself wondering if that was ever an option. As I navigate life after the loss of my father and the rift with Laura, I wonder if severing that tie completely was the right decision. I miss the sister I grew up with, but I also recognize that so much has changed. I've sought advice from friends, and many believe I've taken the right approach for my well-being, but a part of me is always going to wonder if things could have been different. As I ruminate on the situation, I find myself contemplating if I'm the asshole for not being willing to forgive Laura and support her as she adjusts to life without our father. I hate her for refusing to help my sister after she stole my inheritance. In this jigsaw puzzle of familial ties, grief, love, and betrayal, the pieces no longer seem to fit together quite like they used to. And therein lies my dilemma, the emotional struggle that I find myself continuing to wrestle with. I hate her for trying to make my sister see she's lying to herself. Background: I'm a 29-year-old woman named Lila, and I have a 26-year-old sister named Jess. Our relationship has always been rocky due to our contrasting personalities. Where I am, structured, logical, and prefer to rely on evidence and sound reasoning, Jess has always been more free-spirited, relying heavily on her feelings and intuition. This has led to many disagreements over the years, but we generally get along and try to support each other as best as we can. However, recently things have taken a dramatic turn. Recent events. About 6 months ago, Jess started dating a guy named Mark. At first, I was supportive and eager to meet him. Jess spoke about him with such enthusiasm that I couldn't help but be excited too. But as time went on, I began to notice small things that started to raise red flags in my mind. Mark is charming and fun, but he often comes off as somewhat disingenuous. He tends to exaggerate his accomplishments and frequently brings up his lavish lifestyle, talking about new cars he drives, trips he has taken, and connections he has in high places. Initially, I brushed it off as excitement. However, the more I learned about him, the more apprehensive I became. My concerns deepened when I overheard a conversation between Jess and Mark one evening during dinner at our parents' house. Jess was glowing, while Mark discussed his business ventures, but I felt a knot in my stomach, hearing him talk about things I suspected were inflated. When Jess raved about how successful he was, an uncomfortable feeling knotted in my stomach. He had an aura of deception that I just couldn't shake off. The confrontation. A few weeks later, I decided it was time to share my concerns with Jess. I approached the topic gently, aiming to avoid an all-out battle. During a quiet moment at coffee, I broached the subject by referencing a few of Mark's statements that didn't add up. I asked her if she had ever verified the things he said or questioned his claims. "Lila, you're being ridiculous." She snapped. "Just because you're a skeptic doesn't mean that I have to live my life doubting everything. You're such a downer." I felt my heart sink. The conversation took a tumultuous turn. She was emotionally attached to Mark and couldn't see the potential dangers of her blind trust. Feeling frustrated, but still wanting to support her, I tried to explain that sometimes love can blind us, and we have to stay cautious. You don't trust people, Lila. It's why you're single. "You need to loosen up," Jess said, her tone dripping with disappointment. It stung, but I knew she was just reacting out of her emotional attachment rather than honestly considering the facts I presented. From that point onward, the tension between us only grew. I truly believed I was helping her avoid a bad situation, but my efforts were met with hostility and denial. Jess cut our discussions short, insisting that Mark was wonderful and that I simply didn't understand him. Escalating tension. After that, I tried to step back and give her space, choosing to remain neutral to keep the peace. However, it wasn't long before the situation escalated. Jess began to change. She started spending every waking moment with Mark, neglecting friendships and burying herself in his world of glitz and glam. A month later, Jess invited me to a casual dinner with Mark, claiming it would be an opportunity to see how great he really was. I couldn't say no, so I reluctantly agreed. Walking into the dinner, I felt anxious. Observing Mark's interactions confirmed my worries. He spoke about luxury items and his travels without offering concrete truths or any real emotional depth. The night turned sour when Mark began to criticize me indirectly. With a smirk, he derided my lifestyle choices, pointing out that I was too uptight and lacked spontaneity. Jess laughed along, and something inside me snapped. "I can't believe you're letting him speak about me like this," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "This is not how you treat family." "See, this is why you're single," he shot back. "You're bitter like a bitter old crone. No wonder you're alone." At that moment, Jess's laughter died down, and she shifted awkwardly in her seat. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to keep my composure. Feeling the heat of the moment, I spoke directly to Jess. "I'm concerned about you. I just want to make sure you're happy, genuinely happy. I can't support a relationship when I feel it's damaging you." The fallout. After the dinner, Jess and I had it out. She accused me of being jealous and trying to drive them apart. I exploded, sharing everything I'd kept bottled up. The red flags I had seen in Mark, the hesitations that plagued my mind. She cried, and for the first time admitted she felt a little lost, but insisted that she loved him. I tried to show empathy, holding her close. "I'm not against your love, Jess. I just want you to really examine what you want." But my attempts at a heart-to-heart fell flat as Jess became more defensive. "You're suffocating me. I'm an adult, and I can make my own decisions," she raged. I attempted to explain my perspective, that my worries stemmed from a place of love, but it only made things worse. Jess ultimately told me that if I couldn't support her relationship, I could stay out of her life. It felt like a dagger in my chest. Our parents had always encouraged us to be each other's pillar of support, yet I felt I was losing my sister forever to someone I believed was bad for her. The aftermath. The following month was the worst. Jess started distancing herself, only speaking to me in short texts about trivial matters. When I tried to reach out for a chat, she'd turn cold, reminding me that she didn't need my negative energy. I began to feel like a heavy weight on her life, a burden instead of a sister. My parents noticed the rift and talked to me about it. I explained all my valid reasons for concern. They understood, but comforted me that sometimes people need to make their own mistakes to learn. I grasped their logic but still felt an overwhelming dread. What if she made a terrible mistake? I couldn't shake the feeling I would regret it for the rest of my life if I didn't say something. The decision. One day, speaking to a close friend about it all, she asked me a question that changed everything. "What would you say to your sister if you were sure you loved her despite her choices?" That struck a chord deep within me. I realized maybe I could tell Jess I loved her and wanted her happiness more than I wanted to be right or in control of the situation. A few days later, after contemplating everything, I decided to reach out sincerely. I wrote her a long message, expressing how much I loved her, how I wouldn't turn my back on her choices, but I also wanted her to know I was genuinely concerned about her well-being in relation to Mark. I ended the message with an invitation for us to talk over dinner. No pressure, just sisterly bonding. To my relief, she accepted. When we sat down at a small restaurant outside the city, the conversation was cautious at first, but I told her about my feelings. "I apologize if I tried to dictate your choices. I'm here because I love you. I want to support you, even if I don't agree with everything." Slowly it began, an openness I had hoped for. Jess opened up about feeling neglected by friendships as she became so consumed in her relationship. I listened, feeling a growing hope that she was ready to confront this herself. We spent hours talking about everything, the tension of the past months melting away like ice on a sunny day. Resolution. Several weeks later, Jess took the courageous step to break up with Mark. She shared how hurtful his comments had been and how, if anything, they had only made her doubt herself more. Jess finally acknowledged that I was right to express my concern all along. It took some time, but our bond began to heal. She allowed herself to reconnect with her friends, and I felt relieved knowing she was reclaiming her independence. That said, it wasn't easy. The battle between what I felt was right for her and her autonomy created a lingering tension for both of us. To this day, we often revisit this chapter of our lives. We talk about the importance of honesty in family and the complexity of our love for one another. While I still find myself in moments of skepticism, I also cherish that we can be open and authentic with each other now. It turned out Jess needed space to figure herself out, and through that journey, we both emerged stronger. Conclusion. So now I ask the question, Aita for expressing my concerns to Jess about Mark when I believed he was lying and manipulating her. I still love my sister and want the best for her, but I sometimes wonder if I should have just kept my thoughts to myself rather than letting my worries threaten our relationship. We have reconciled, but the scars from that time still linger. And I wonder if there might be a better way to navigate such situations in the future. And here the story wraps up. While I've shared every detail of my struggle and growth, it's ultimately a complex reflection of love, concern, and the complications of family dynamics. If you have thoughts or feedback, I'm open to hearing them. Aita for not inviting my sister's boyfriend to my wedding. Background. My name is Claire, and I'm a 28-year-old woman preparing to marry the love of my life, Ben, next spring. It's been a whirlwind romance. We met 3 years ago while hiking in the Rockies and bonded over our shared love for adventure and travel. After a year of long distance when I moved to Seattle for work, we finally settled down together in a cozy apartment that's filled to the brim with books and photographs. From our travels, my family has always played a significant role in my life. I have one sister, Emily, who is 25. Growing up, we were incredibly close. We shared secrets, went through teenage angst together, and supported each other through school and relationships. However, things took a turn when Emily started dating her current boyfriend, Jake, about 2 years ago. The relationship with Jake, from the first time I met Jake, I wasn't impressed. He exuded confidence, but it felt over the top. He had this cocky demeanor that rubbed me the wrong way. Initially, I thought it was just my protective instincts as an older sister kicking in, but the more I got to know him, the more I realized that my instincts were right. Jake is charming on the surface, but underneath he's self-centered and manipulative. There have been several instances that have raised red flags for me. One time during a family gathering, Jake made a snide comment about my job, calling it not a real career, and insinuating that my salary was pathetic compared to his. Emily laughed it off, claiming he was just joking, but I could see that it hurt my parents. On another occasion, Jake showed up late to a dinner I hosted and blamed it on Emily for not being ready on time, even though I knew she had been waiting on him. Despite these incidents, Emily remains head over heels for him. I've tried discussing my concerns with her, but she accuses me of being overly critical and judgmental. "You just don't like him because he's not your type," she said during one of our heated conversations. I care about her, I want her to be happy, but I'm left feeling helpless, and our relationship has suffered because of it. The wedding planning fast forward to my engagement. Ben and I announced our engagement to our families over dinner. My parents were thrilled, and so was Emily at first. However, I could sense that something shifted when the wedding planning began. I've dreamt of my wedding day since I was a little girl. I want it to be intimate, with only our closest friends and family, but I also envisioned a beautiful venue and a cozy atmosphere. So we chose a vineyard in the countryside that produces some of the best wine I've ever tasted, along with stunning backdrops for photos. Since Ben and I are both nature lovers, it felt like the perfect spot. When I shared the guest list with my parents, my dad noticed I hadn't included Jake. I explained that I didn't want him there, and my dad raised an eyebrow in disbelief. "Claire, he's Emily's boyfriend. She'll be upset if he's not invited," he said. I crossed my arms, ready for the confrontation. "Dad, it's my wedding. I should be able to choose who I want there. I don't trust Jake, and I don't feel comfortable having him around. That's my decision." I could see my dad weighing his options, but he dropped the conversation after a few minutes. Emily, however, didn't feel the same way. The confrontation about. A month after sending out save the dates, I received a phone call from Emily. Her tone was icy and my heart sank as soon as I answered. "Claire, we need to talk." "Hey, Em, what's up?" I chirped, trying to diffuse any tension that might be lurking below the surface. "Why didn't you invite Jake to your wedding?" Her voice was cold, devoid of any warmth. "Because, Emily, I really don't want him there. I hope you can understand that, I replied, keeping my tone even. Understand what? That you're excluding him because you don't like him, she retorted. He's my boyfriend, Claire. He's going to be part of my life for a long time, whether you like it or not. I never said he couldn't be part of your life, but this is my wedding. I want to feel comfortable on my special day, I explained. This isn't about you or him, it's about what's best for me. Emily grew increasingly frustrated. You're being unreasonable. You want me to be happy for you, but you can't even do the same for me. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my emotions in check. It's not about happiness, it's about safety and comfort. You know how I feel about Jake. I don't want to become part of some awkward family drama at my own wedding. The conversation spiraled into accusations, with Emily saying I was selfish and childish. It ended with her hanging up on me, leaving me feeling deflated. The fallout as the wedding date drew closer. I received numerous texts from Emily. She sent me memes about how weddings are for love, not for hate, and articles about the importance of family coming together. I would respond politely but firmly, reiterating my stance. Each response seemed to enrage her further. The tension reached a boiling point when I received a message from my mum. She urged me to reconsider my decision about Jake. Claire, we love you, but we also love Emily. Think about her feelings. She deserves to have her boyfriend there. Every time my mom said that, I felt a pit in my stomach. I wasn't trying to ruin my sister's happiness. I wanted to set clear boundaries. People had no idea how toxic Jake could be, but I wasn't about to defend my decision to the very people who didn't understand the full story. Weeks passed with silence from Emily. Ben suggested reaching out and trying to mend things, but I couldn't bring myself to be the one to apologize. I didn't feel I had done anything wrong. The last thing I wanted was to admit fault in a situation where I was trying to protect my own peace of mind. The compromise. Then came the day I received a voice message from Emily. She sounded defeated, her voice trembling as she spoke. Claire, please just think about it. I don't want to lose you. You're my sister and I love you. Can we talk about this? Maybe I can speak to Jake and make sure he behaves. I want both you and him in my life. I pondered her words for a bit. Did I want to risk my sister's happiness, even if it meant having to tolerate Jake? The thought gnawed at me. I decided to give it some thought before making a final decision, which was ultimately a half-hearted concession. A week later, I called Emily and said, "Okay, I'll consider letting Jake come, but only if you promise that he will keep his comments to himself and not be rude." There was a brief pause before she responded joyfully, "Really? Oh, Claire, thank you. You have no idea how much this means to me." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders just by proposing a compromise, although inside me I still felt apprehensive. The wedding day fast forward to the wedding day, and I was a bundle of nerves. The venue was beautiful, the flowers were in bloom, and I was surrounded by my closest friends and family, all of whom radiated joy. I wore a flowing white dress that matched my vision perfectly, and when Ben saw me, his face lit up with a kind of love so profound, I felt it in every fiber of my being. However, as I scanned the room, my heart raced as I zeroed in on Jake, who had the audacity to flaunt his usual swagger. I felt a pang of anxiety in the pit of my stomach. I tried to ignore him and focus on the celebration, but Jake's presence loomed over me like a dark cloud. In the middle of the ceremony, as I was saying my vows, Jake made a loud comment about how I should add a reality check clause for marriage. Gasps rippled through the audience, and I could see my father glaring at him. My face flushed with anger and embarrassment. This was supposed to be my day, and I refused to let him ruin it. I took a deep breath, squeezed Ben's hand tightly, and continued. After the ceremony, I confronted Jake, who was laughing with a group of guests. "What the hell was that?" I hissed, my voice low and seething. Jake chuckled. "Relax, it was just a joke. Everyone loved it. I did not find it funny, and I don't want you to speak again unless you have something nice to say," I snapped. "Who are you to tell me what to say?" He replied, his arrogance flaring up. I felt cornered and was prepared to escalate the matter when Emily approached. "Jake, can you just give Claire some space? She's having a tough day, and you shouldn't be causing drama." "That's rich coming from you," Jake retorted, rolling his eyes. Suddenly I snapped. "You know what? You shouldn't even be here. You disrespected me at my own wedding, and this is not okay." The crowd around us buzzed in shock, and I could see my parents exchanging worried glances. I locked eyes with Emily, willing her to see what I saw, but Emily stood her ground. "You're being so dramatic, Claire. You're ruining this for everyone." Her words cut through me, and I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. All I could think about was the love I wanted to share on this day, not the anxiety Jake had brought into my life once again. Feeling utterly defeated, I stepped away to collect myself. I didn't want my wedding to be a battleground, but deep down I could feel I was fighting not just for myself, but also for Emily's future with someone who might not be worthy of her love. The aftermath. The rest of the wedding went as well as it could, but I continued to feel the tension with Emily and Jake simmering beneath the surface. As we danced and celebrated, I couldn't shake the feeling that something precious was lost. After the wedding day, the fallout hit harder than I expected. Emily refused to talk to me for several weeks. I tried to reach out through text, sending her photos from the wedding, highlighting all the love that surrounded us, but she remained distant. After the wedding day, the fallout hit harder than I expected. Emily refused to talk to me for several weeks. I tried to reach out through text, sending her photos from the wedding, highlighting all the love that surrounded us, but she remained distant. Finally, the emotional weight became too heavy for me to bear, so I called her. Her voice was cold, and it felt like we were having a conversation between strangers. "Emily, please just talk to me." "I miss you," I said, my heart aching. "What do you want me to say, Claire?" she said, her tone sharp. "You made it clear. You don't care about my relationship." "That's not true. I care about you, but I needed to protect myself on my wedding day. How could you not see that?" I argued. "And you couldn't have just kept your mouth shut for one day," she shot back. I took a deep breath, feeling drained. "I did try my best, but it was hard when Jake disrespected me right at the altar. It hurt." "That's your interpretation, but he was just trying to lighten the mood," she replied. "You should be more forgiving." "Forgiving? I don't think you fully grasp what he said and how it impacted me. It was more than just a joke. It was hurtful," I said, trying to articulate my feelings, but she didn't want to hear it. "I can't keep talking to you if you keep dismissing Jake. He makes me happy. I thought you would want me to be with someone who cares about me." "I do. But I wish you would analyze whether he truly cares about you, because I see how he interacts with you." "I'm scared you're overlooking things," I said, desperation creeping into my voice. "Take a step back," she replied curtly. "I would have never excluded Ben from your wedding. This isn't fair." The conversation ended without resolution, and I sobbed quietly as I hung up the phone. I spent the next couple of weeks in a fog, feeling drained from the whole ordeal. I loved my sister fiercely, and it felt all-consuming that we had this gaping rift between us. Conclusion: as the months rolled by, I went about living my life with Ben, but I constantly had the nagging feeling of emptiness where my sister used to be. I occasionally received viscous texts from her calling me selfish and narrow-minded. I tried not to respond angrily, but it was hard to be the bigger person when I felt cornered in my own emotions. I sought counsel from friends, pouring out my heart while they listened, and reminded me of my worth in the situation. They encouraged me to stay true to myself despite the drama. After much inner reflection, I penned a long message to Emily one last time. I expressed my love for her, along with my hurt and disappointment, and said I needed some time to heal. Much to my surprise, the following day, Emily responded with a long text filled with apologetic words. Though she initially still defended her relationship with Jake, she acknowledged that she might have overreacted and promised to take some time to think about everything. Eventually, our rift began to heal, moving slowly toward reconciliation. Though Jake remained an issue, Emily now promised to keep an open mind, saying she valued my opinion and our relationship. So, Aita for not inviting my sister's boyfriend to my wedding. In hindsight, perhaps I should have found a way to negotiate better with Emily, I should have acknowledged my sister's deep love and connection, but in that moment all I wanted was peace within my special day. After everything, I couldn't shake the feeling that love, much like weddings, can sometimes require hard choices. Hayata for refusing to attend my sister's wedding, after discovering a family secret. Introduction. Growing up in a tight-knit family, I always thought that love and loyalty were the foundations of our relationships. Our parents instilled strong values in us, and we often spent holidays together, sharing laughs, stories, and traditions. As the oldest sibling, I always tried to set a good example for my younger sister, Emily, and brother, Jamie. But as the years went by, that bond would be tested in ways that I never saw coming. As I embarked on my 20s, Emily, the youngest, fell in love with a charming man named Mark. Their whirlwind romance led to an engagement that had all of us in the family excited. Emily was overjoyed, and despite my initial reservations about her rushing into things, I supported her completely. However, just weeks before their wedding, everything changed, leading to the most difficult decision I have ever had to make. The build-up it was a bright Saturday afternoon when I received a call from my mother. She sounded unusually frantic. My heart raced as I answered. "Honey, there's something you need to know before you stand up at Emily's wedding," she said, her voice trembling. I immediately felt a knot form in my stomach, sensing that my family was about to reveal something significant. After 20 minutes filled with silence and hesitation, my mother finally told me about a secret my parents had kept hidden from my siblings and me. Throughout our lives, they had built an image of our family being perfect, with no dirty laundry to air. However, I was shocked to learn that Emily, while always being the bright light of our family, was not biologically related to my parents. My mother revealed that Emily was adopted, and they had chosen not to tell her until she was older. My mother burst into tears, expressing how difficult it had been for them to keep it a secret all these years. "We didn't know how to tell you, especially when she seemed so happy," she sobbed. I was stunned. It was as if the floor had been ripped out from beneath me. Emily had always been my sister, my confidant and my partner in crime, and the thought that she was adopted completely shattered my perception of our family. The conflict. In the days that followed, I struggled with the revelation. My parents wanted me to keep it a secret. They thought it would ruin Emily's big day if she found out just before the wedding, but I couldn't brush it off so easily. I couldn't shake off the feeling that this revelation might change everything. I started to feel a growing disconnect with Emily. She was excited about her wedding, and I felt nothing but confusion and worry. Fast forward to the week before the wedding. Emily was glimmering with joy and anticipation, but I couldn't muster up the same feelings. One evening, while we were setting up decorations together, we began discussing how our lives would change after the marriage. I found myself hesitating to reveal my doubts, fearing that she might sense when emotions were running high. Finally, I decided I needed to talk to someone. I reached out to my close friend, Sarah, and shared what I had learned. "Aren't you worried about how this might affect your sister?" she asked, frowning. "I mean, does she really know who she is? How will she handle being adopted now that she's getting married?" The floodgates opened, and I realized I was feeling things I couldn't ignore: confusion, anger, and a gnawing sense of betrayal. Though my family had been loving and supportive, the entire structure of our trust felt as unstable as a house of cards. I explained to Sarah how deep down I was terrified of what this meant for our relationship and whether I should drop a bombshell on a day meant for love and celebration. On the day of the rehearsal dinner, my emotions reached a breaking point. The atmosphere was filled with joy and excitement. Emily seemed blissful, surrounded by friends and family. As I stood at the center of the table holding my fork, ready to toast her future, my heart raced. Suddenly I blurted out, "Are you sure you're ready for this?" The silence that followed was deafening. Emily looked confused and my mother shot me a death glare. I attempted to justify my outburst, but soon it spiraled into a confrontation. The atmosphere turned sour as family members began to bicker and Emily became upset. I felt ashamed, but I was forced to confront my feelings and they came pouring out. "You deserve to know the truth about yourself before you commit to this immense journey," I exclaimed. The room went silent. Emily was in tears. Her friends, shocked and uncomfortable. My parents hurriedly tried to calm things down, at one point even dragging me away. The fallout after the rehearsal dinner, things grew tense. Emily didn't speak to me for days. My parents attempted to smooth things over, but I felt increasingly alienated. The day of the wedding arrived, and I had a knot in my stomach. I envisioned Emily walking down the aisle in a beautiful gown, bringing joy, while I would be compelled to keep a secret that weighed heavily on my heart. I knew that my sister deserved the truth, but could I ruin her wedding day? On the way to the venue, I wrestled with myself, debating whether to pull Emily aside and confess everything. Perhaps she could understand, but I held back, afraid of the outcome. After all, the last thing I wanted was to turn her wedding into a nightmare. The ceremony unfolded beautifully, and Emily shone like an angel as she walked down the aisle. But in the back of my mind, all I could think about was the lie, the secret that lay nestled in the shadows. The moment the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, I felt an overwhelming urge to scream out the truth. How could everything feel right about this moment if the foundation was built on a lie? When Emily caught my eye during the reception, her smile felt heavy with unspoken words. I wanted to run to her to explain myself, but I was paralyzed. I watched her dance with Mark, her joy palpable, and I felt a mix of resentment, betrayal, and protectiveness flaring inside me. Why couldn't they understand the emotional turmoil I was living with? Days passed, and my absence from family gatherings became more pronounced. I turned into a ghost, hiding behind my facade of normalcy. I shared my turmoil with a couple of close friends, and they urged me to stand my ground. I shouldn't have to wear a mask for the sake of others when my feelings were genuine. It felt wrong not to speak up. It felt wrong to pretend everything was perfect. The confrontation. Finally, several weeks after the wedding, I received another call from my mother. It was time to face the truth. "Emily wants to see you," she said, her voice full of expectation. That night, as I approached my parents' home, I could see Emily sitting on the porch, her expression a mix of relief and apprehension. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. She looked so small and vulnerable, and my heart ached for the sister I thought I knew. We sat on the steps, surrounded by the cool evening air. "I'm sorry for my outburst at the rehearsal dinner," I started. But before I could finish, she interrupted. "Why didn't you just tell me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. I would have understood. I had a right to know. Emotion swelled within me as everything I had kept locked away began to surface. "I was scared to ruin your happiness. I didn't know if you were going to reject me for revealing something I thought you had the right to know long ago." Emily shook her head, tears pooling in her eyes. "How could you think that? I would have wanted to know. I would have wanted you to help me understand all of this. You're my sister. You're supposed to stand by me." The tension between us was palpable. I saw how hurt she was, and it made me feel heavier. "I'm afraid this changes everything," I replied, my heart racing. "You've returned to a family built on lies." She took a deep breath, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. "But that doesn't mean my love for Mark isn't real. I'm still me, right? I don't have all the answers, but I know my heart, and it loves him." I felt a sense of urgency rising inside me. But what if he flat out rejects you because you're not really his type? What if he married you under a false pretense? Emily's reaction was more than I expected. She glared at me, near rage. "Whoa, Mark loves me, not my blood. You're judging him without knowing any of it. You've put me in a position where I have to choose between a family that never told me the truth and my own self-development." At that moment, I realized how swollen our emotions had become. "I didn't mean it that way," I implored. I care about you and wanted to protect you." As we continued to speak, our words turned from accusations to vulnerable confessions. Emily expressed the void she had felt growing up, not knowing her true origin. I articulated my feelings of betrayal towards our parents, who had chosen to hide something that couldn't possibly stay buried forever. The resolution. The following weeks were filled with conflict. But eventually, Emily and I found common ground. She began to confront our parents about the family secret, and to my surprise, my parents were willing to have open discussions. They admitted that they were terrified of how Emily would react to knowing she was adopted. Still, they wanted peace for Emily, which helped bridge the gap that had formed. After several family gatherings and discussions, we began to rebuild the trust that had been shaken. Emily acknowledged my place in her life as her sister, no matter what our biological ties were. I promised to be there for her, promising we would navigate whatever feelings emerged together. Eventually, I realized something significant. Secrets may break families apart, but honesty and vulnerability have a unique power to bring understanding and compassion. It didn't unravel our love. Rather, it deepened it. Although the journey toward acceptance wasn't easy, we both began to grow, exploring who we were as individuals and as a family rooted in love, regardless of biological ties. Mark proved to be a fierce ally, embracing Emily's journey with open arms. In the end, I learned that families don't always fit the stereotype. Sometimes it takes a major revelation to truly unite against an initial wall built on fear and mistrust. Conclusion. Months after our initial confrontation, I reflected on that fateful call from my mother. I had never expected that one revelation could change my entire perspective on our family. I wasn't the jerk simply for worrying about the truth. I was a sister trying to navigate a sea of emotions I never anticipated. Now that I look back, I realize I am not the asshole for trying to protect my sister. I was afraid of the burden on her shoulders. But I did learn that keeping secrets only serves to strengthen the divide in families. Together, we change the narrative to one filled with understanding, acceptance, and unconditional love, bonds that truly define us. And now I find myself wondering, am I still the AITA, or have I learned that love knows no boundaries?